The worst decisions of my career, and believe me there have been plenty, all started with laughter. My name is Velkorn, and I have served as senior xenobiologist for the Galactic Council for approximately 43 cycles. That is long enough to have reviewed biodiversity reports from 716 different worlds, long enough to have catalogued the physiological peculiarities of species ranging from the silicon-based Krexathy to the ammonia-breathing Eulmorans, and apparently just long enough to become catastrophically overconfident in my own expertise. The humans submitted their application on a second day. I remember because second days were typically quiet, reserved for paperwork and the occasional interdepartmental meeting where nothing of consequence ever happened. The application itself arrived via standard diplomatic channels, a modest data packet containing the usual materials, biographical information on their species, cultural overview, technological capabilities, and of course the mandatory biological assessment required for any species seeking to join our military coalition. I assigned the file to my desktop queue, and promptly ignored it for 3 days. When I finally opened the human submission, I was drinking my morning stimulant, a bitter Valkorian blend that helped shake off the fog of sleep. The first few pages were unremarkable. Carbon-based lifeforms, check. Oxygen breathers, check. Bilateral symmetry, check. Water-dependent biology, check. Check. Standard template material, really. Nothing I had not seen 1,000 times before. Then I reached the environmental parameters section. I actually snorted stimulant through my nasal apertures when I read their homeworld gravity specification, 9.8 meters per second squared. I wiped the liquid from my face and read it again, certain I had misunderstood. But no, there it was, plain as starlight. These humans, these fragile-looking bipedal mammals with their thin skin and their external auditory organs, claim to have evolved on a planet with a gravitational pull that would be classified as severe by any reasonable xenobiological standard. For context, and I feel this is important, the average gravity across known civilized worlds hovers around 6.2 meters per second squared. My own homeworld of Velkros maintains a comfortable 5.7. The Krexathy, who are built like mobile mountains and can shrug off small arms fire, evolved at 7.1. 9.8 was the kind of gravity you found on mining colony punishment details. I immediately forwarded the file to my colleagues in the xenobiology department with a subject line that read, "Look at what just landed on my desk." Literally, the responses came quickly. Jormalex from Comparative Anatomy wrote back, "Either their measurement equipment is broken or they are trying to impress us. My money is on broken equipment." Saravesh, who specialized in evolutionary biology, was more direct. "No way. Impossible. Skeletal structure would need to be reinforced to ridiculous degrees. Muscular system would have to be absurdly overdeveloped just for basic mobility. They would be too heavy to function efficiently. This has to be an error in unit conversion." By midday, the human application had become something of a departmental joke. The full review meeting was scheduled for the following week, and I confess, I went into it with all the seriousness of someone about to discuss a clerical mistake. The conference chamber was packed. Not because anyone thought the humans were important, but because word had spread about the gravity species and everyone wanted a laugh. Commander Thexelor of the Military Integration Office stood at the podium projecting the human data onto the main display screen. He was trying, bless his cardiac muscles, to maintain professional decorum, but even he could not quite suppress the amused trill in his voice. So, according to their submitted documentation, the humans claim, and I want to be clear this is their claim, that their standard planetary gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. The room erupted. Not just polite chuckling, mind you, but full-throated table-slapping laughter. Representative Kilnara from the Heptaran Union actually fell out of her seat. The mineral delegate, whose name I could never properly pronounce, made a sound like rocks grinding together in what I assumed was his species equivalent of hysterical amusement. Perhaps, Jormalex called out from his seat. They measured gravity while standing on their largest moon. More laughter. Or perhaps, Saravesh added, her tongue flickering in mirth, they accidentally calculated the gravitational pull of their entire planetary system combined. The laughter intensified. Even I joined in. I am ashamed to admit. It seemed so obvious that this was simply a measurement error. A mistake made by a species new to interstellar protocols, unfamiliar with our standardized units. It happened sometimes. Young civilizations got confused during first contact procedures. Nothing malicious, just inexperience. Commander Thexelor raised his appendage for silence, wiping moisture from his optical organs. In all seriousness, we need to send this back to them for correction. We cannot process a military application with such blatantly incorrect environmental data. It throws off all the baseline calculations for equipment, rations, habitat requirements, everything. I nodded in agreement. I will have my junior analyst Throp send a diplomatic request for clarification. Probably just need them to recalibrate their instruments to our standard measurement protocols. Make sure the message is polite, Thexler added. We do not want to embarrass them too badly. First contact situations are delicate, of course, I replied, already mentally composing the gentle correction. I will frame it as a routine verification process. The meeting adjourned with everyone in good spirits, convinced we had identified and would soon resolve a simple administrative error. I returned to my office, filed the human application under pending clarification, and assigned Throp to handle the follow-up correspondence. Busy work for a junior analyst. Nothing important. I gave the humans no further thought for the next 2 weeks. That, as I mentioned, was a mistake. Throp was, and I say this with a mixture of respect and residual embarrassment, exactly the kind of analyst who made senior researchers nervous. Young, methodical, and possessed of the deeply inconvenient habit of actually reading everything thoroughly. He appeared at my office door on a 5th-day afternoon, clutching a data tablet to his chest like it contained evidence of a conspiracy. His crest feathers were standing at odd angles, which for his species indicated either extreme confusion or significant distress. Senior researcher Velkorn, he said, his voice carrying that particular tremor of a junior staffer about to contradict a superior. I have completed the review of the human application materials, and I think we may have a problem. I did not look up from my own work. Let me guess. They sent back the corrected gravity measurements. What is it, 6.5? 7. No, senior researcher. They confirmed the original measurement, 9.8 meters per second squared. They seemed, well, confused by our request for clarification. That got my attention. I set down my stylus and fixed Throp with what I hoped was a patient expression. They confirmed it? That makes no sense. Did you explain to them that their instruments must be miscalibrated? I did, senior researcher. Multiple times. They insisted their instruments are functioning perfectly. In fact, and this is where it gets strange, they kept referring to their gravity as, and I am quoting directly here, standard baseline parameters. I blinked. Standard? They think 9.8 is standard. Yes, senior researcher. Throp's crest feathers flattened slightly. So I started cross-referencing their other environmental data to see if perhaps their entire measurement system was skewed. You know, maybe they use different base units or something. Sensible approach. And everything else checks out perfectly. Their atmospheric composition matches our readings from long-range scans. Their solar radiation measurements are accurate. Their planetary rotation period, orbital mechanics, axial tilt, everything is precisely correct and properly converted to our standard units. I leaned back in my chair, which creaked in protest. So their instruments work fine for everything except gravity? That is what I thought initially, yes. But then I started reading their supplementary materials more carefully. Throp placed his tablet on my desk and brought up a file. They included extensive documentation about their species' physical capabilities, athletic records, occupational health standards, that sort of thing. Standard inclusion for military applications. Right. Yes. Baseline fitness data. We use it to determine appropriate duty assignments. Exactly. So I was reviewing their athletic performance metrics, trying to establish what they consider peak physical condition. And senior researcher, the numbers make absolutely no sense. I pulled the tablet closer. The screen displayed what appeared to be human sporting records, running speeds, jumping heights, lifting capacities, endurance measurements. At first glance, nothing seemed particularly unusual. Walk me through it, Throp. He pointed at a specific entry. This is their record for what they call the high jump. An individual human named Javier Sotomayor achieved a vertical leap of 2.45 meters. That seems adequate. Senior researcher. He did that in 9.8 meters per second squared gravity. The implication hung in the air for a moment before it hit me. I did some quick mental calculations. Wait, that would mean if we brought this Sotomayor person to a standard gravity world, he could potentially jump approximately 4 meters high. Yes, maybe higher. I am not certain of the exact physiology scaling. I stared at the tablet. That cannot be right. It gets worse. Throp scrolled to another section. Their weightlifting records. A human named Hafthor Bjornsson deadlifted 501 kilograms, again in 9.8 gravity. My manipulator appendages went numb. I knew enough physics to understand what that meant. The force required to move that mass in that gravity well, the muscular structure necessary, the skeletal reinforcement needed to not simply collapse under the strain. Throp, are you absolutely certain you are reading these numbers correctly? I have checked 17 times, senior researcher. I even had the translation algorithms verified by the linguistics department. The numbers are accurate. I scrolled through more data. Marathon running times that suggested sustained cardiovascular performance that would exhaust most species in minutes. Endurance swimming records measured in hours. A notation about something called free climbing, where humans apparently scaled sheer rock faces using only their manipulator appendages, in full 9.8 gravity for recreation. This is clearly exaggerated, I said, though my voice lacked conviction. Species often embellish their capabilities in military applications, trying to seem more impressive than they actually are. I considered that, Throp replied carefully, so I cross-referenced with their occupational safety documentation, the boring regulatory material that nobody bothers to falsify, and their construction workers routinely carry loads of 25 to 30 kilograms, not in specialized exoskeletons or with mechanical assistance, just carrying things, as part of normal work duties. In 9.8 gravity, I felt a strange sensation in my thorax, something between indigestion and creeping dread. How much can our construction workers carry? In standard gravity, approximately 8 kilograms, senior researcher. 12, for very short distances with rest breaks. We sat in silence for a long moment. There has to be an explanation, I finally said. Maybe their definition of kilograms is different, or they measure work shifts in different time increments. I checked all of that. Their units match ours precisely. Senior researcher Valgorn, I think we need to consider the possibility that the humans are factually and accurately reporting their actual environmental conditions and physical capabilities, but that would mean, yes, senior researcher, it would mean they actually evolved in 9.8 gravity, and that everything we assumed about biological limitations in high-gravity environments is wrong, at least where humans are concerned. I pushed the tablet away from me like it was radioactive. This is absurd. We have xenobiological models based on centuries of research across hundreds of worlds. High-gravity worlds do not produce species like this. They produce slow, heavy, armored species built for survival. Not whatever these humans are. Throp's crest feathers rose again. What should we do? I drummed my appendages on the desk, thinking, if, and this was still a significant if in my mind, if the humans were being truthful, then we had a genuine anomaly on our manipulators. But I was not about to overturn established xenobiological theory based on some confusing paperwork and the word of a species we had barely met. We send an observation team, I decided, direct eyes on the ground. We watch these humans in their natural environment, verify these claims empirically. Either we will find the explanation for this discrepancy, or we will confirm that something very unusual is happening on Earth. Should I recommend a military security detail accompany the observers? For what? A bunch of gravity world inhabitants who probably cannot even walk properly? No, Throp. Send our standard scientific observation crew. 3 xenobiologists, 2 cultural specialists, standard sensor equipment. They go, they observe, they report back. Simple verification mission. Throp nodded, though his crest feathers remained skeptical. I will make the arrangement, senior researcher. Good. And Throp, do not mention this conversation to anyone else in the department. I do not need Jormulex and the others getting wind that we are taking this seriously. They will never let me hear the end of it. Of course, senior researcher. He left, and I returned my attention to the tablet, scrolling through page after page of human physical data, athletic records, occupational requirements, even medical documentation about injury recovery times that seemed impossibly short. Probably all explainable, I told myself. Measurement errors, cultural exaggerations, translation problems. The observation team would sort it out. After all, I was a senior xenobiologist with 4 decades of experience. I understood the fundamental principles of biological development across gravitational gradients. There were rules, established patterns, predictable outcomes. The humans were just another data point, nothing to worry about. The observation team's first transmission came 3 days after they entered Earth orbit, and the audio quality was terrible because the lead observer, a Heptaran named Quillix, kept forgetting to hold the communicator steady. His appendages were shaking. Senior researcher Velkran, I need you to understand, we have been observing a human military installation for the past 16 hours and the entire team needs to file an emergency report because nothing, And I mean nothing in our training prepared us for what we are witnessing. I was in the middle of eating my midday meal and nearly choked on it. Quillix, slow down. What is happening? Are you under threat? Do you need extraction? No, nothing like that. The humans do not even know we are here. We are in standard orbit with full stealth screening. But Velkron, you need to see this. I am sending you live visual feed right now. My display screen flickered to life, showing an aerial view of what appeared to be a human military training facility. Large open spaces, various structures, groups of humans moving in formation. It looked, well, ordinary. Quillix, I am looking at soldiers jogging. What exactly am I supposed to be concerned about? Watch their pace, senior researcher. We have been timing them. I observed the humans running in neat rows, their bipedal gait steady and rhythmic. They appeared to be moving at a reasonable speed. Nothing exceptional. They have been maintaining that pace for 42 minutes, senior researcher. Non-stop. In full 9.8 gravity. My meal suddenly lost all appeal. That is, are you certain your chronometer is functioning? We have checked it 8 times. And Velkorn, they are not even breathing hard. This is their warm-up exercise. They call it a warm-up. On screen, the humans came to a stop. A larger human, presumably an instructor, began demonstrating something. He dropped to the ground, extended his body parallel to the surface, and began raising and lowering himself using only his upper appendages. What is he doing? They call them push-ups, senior researcher. Watch the counter display we have added. Numbers appeared on my screen. 1, 2, 3. The human continued the motion with mechanical precision. 10, 20, 30. He showed no signs of slowing. 40, 50, 60. How many is he going to do? The standard requirement for passing their basic fitness evaluation is 42 of these, senior researcher. This particular instructor performed 130 yesterday. For fun, he told the other humans he was bored. I watched in horrified fascination as the human completed his demonstration at 100 repetitions and stood up, barely winded. The rest of the soldiers began performing the same exercise in unison. Quillix, our strongest military recruits, the Kreksathi shock troops, can perform approximately 6 of those movements in standard gravity before requiring rest. You are telling me average human soldiers do 42 as a minimum standard? That is exactly what I am telling you, senior researcher. And it gets so much worse. The scene shifted. Now the camera focused on what appeared to be a construction site in a human urban center. Workers moved across metal frameworks high above the ground, carrying materials, operating equipment, performing tasks that made my survival instincts scream in protest. They are not wearing safety harnesses, I said, my voice barely a whisper. They are, Quillix corrected. But watch what happens when one needs to move between sections. A human worker unclipped his safety line, grabbed onto a vertical beam, and hauled himself up approximately 3 meters using only his upper appendages. Hand over hand, in 9.8 gravity. Like it was nothing. He reached the next level, clipped back in, and continued working. We consulted our physiological database. Quillix continued. A Heptaran worker attempting that maneuver in standard gravity would likely suffer muscular tears and skeletal fractures. This human just did it in high gravity during his normal work shift. We have watched dozens of them do the same thing. How long are their work shifts? 8 to 10 hours, senior researcher. With 2 short breaks. I had to sit down. The feed changed again. This time it showed what appeared to be a recreational facility. Humans of various sizes were engaged in different activities, running on mechanical platforms, lifting heavy objects repeatedly, striking suspended bags with their appendages. This is their voluntary exercise, senior researcher. They do this for health and enjoyment after their normal daily activities. A smaller human, possibly a juvenile based on the proportions, approached a bar mounted between 2 posts. The young human jumped, caught the bar, and proceeded to pull their entire body weight up until their chin cleared the bar. Then they lowered themselves and repeated the motion. 10 times, 12 times, 15. How old is that juvenile? According to the facility records we intercepted, approximately 14 solar cycles. Still growing, not even fully developed yet. My thorax felt tight. A 14-cycle juvenile has the upper body strength to perform 15 vertical pulls against 9.8 gravity. Senior researcher, I need to show you one more thing. Then you will understand why we are requesting immediate emergency consultation. The image shifted to what appeared to be a public park. Smaller humans, clearly younglings, were engaged in play activities. They ran, jumped, climbed on various structures, all while laughing and making high-pitched vocalizations of joy. One particularly small human, barely half a meter tall, climbed up a sloped structure, stood at the top, and then jumped off, landing on the ground below without injury. The drop was easily 1.5 meters. That youngling, Quillix said quietly, weighs approximately 12 kilograms. It just fell 1.5 meters in 9.8 gravity and landed with enough force that we calculated the impact at roughly 117 newtons. Then it got up and did it again. For entertainment. I could not speak. Senior researcher Velkuren. We ran the calculations. If a Hepturan youngling of equivalent mass experienced that impact force, it would result in fractures to at least 3 limbs and possible internal damage. That human child giggled and ran back to do it repeatedly. The observation team's cultural specialist, a Yulmoran named Sith, appeared in frame next to Quillix. Her chromatic patterns were cycling through distress colors. We have been monitoring human information networks, she said, her voice translator crackling with urgency. They have competitive activities where they deliberately collide with each other at high speeds. They call it football, and rugby, and hockey. They wear minimal protective gear and consider broken bones an acceptable occupational hazard. Senior researcher. Their children play these collision sports starting at approximately 6 solar cycles of age. We also found extensive documentation of something called rock climbing, Quillix added. Humans ascend vertical cliff faces hundreds of meters high using only their appendages to grip small protrusions in the stone. Some of them do this without safety equipment at all. They call it free soloing and they do it voluntarily. I stared at the screen, watching a human youngling approximately 8 cycles old, successfully navigate across a series of elevated platforms, swinging from bar to bar, demonstrating grip strength and spatial coordination that would be remarkable for an adult of most species. We need comprehensive analysis, senior researcher. We attempted to calculate the baseline force requirements for normal human daily activity. Walking, standing, sitting. Basic manipulation of objects. The numbers they are beyond what we thought possible for a species of their mass and structure. Quillix pulled up a data chart on the transmission. A human standing still is constantly exerting force against 9.8 gravity. Their skeletal system is under continuous load. Their muscular system is engaged just to maintain posture. Every single movement they make requires force outputs that would exhaust most galactic species within minutes. And they do this every single day, for their entire lives. Starting from the moment they learn to walk as infants. What is the comparison to our baseline, I managed to ask. Senior researcher. An average human exerts more force just getting out of bed in the morning than a Velcrosian does during an entire standard work shift. Their resting metabolic rate is elevated to compensate for the constant energy demands of existing in high gravity. They are, for lack of a better term, biological pressure-forged organisms. Every single one of them. Sith's colors shifted to deep purple, indicating severe concern. We intercepted communications from their military command discussing potential deployment schedules for coalition operations. Senior researcher. They were debating whether to inform us that our standard gravity environments might be, quote, too easy and potentially lead to training degradation for their soldiers. Too easy, I repeated numbly. They are concerned that operating in normal gravity will make their troops less effective because they will not be working hard enough. Senior researcher Velkuren. We need to abort this observation mission and return immediately. The team consensus is that we have severely, catastrophically underestimated what these humans are capable of. If they join the coalition military and we deploy them without proper understanding of their capabilities, Quillix's image leaned closer to the camera. Senior researcher. Imagine a Krexathi shock trooper. Now imagine that trooper could move twice as fast, hit 3 times as hard, and maintain combat effectiveness 4 times as long. Then imagine an entire species of them. That is what we are looking at. The humans are not just another member species. They are going to fundamentally change the strategic balance of the entire coalition. I looked at the data streaming across my screen. Performance metrics, force calculations, endurance measurements, all of it painting a picture that contradicted everything I thought I knew about evolutionary biology and high-gravity environments. Compile everything, I said finally. Every observation, every measurement, every calculation. Prepare a full emergency report for the Galactic Council. I will schedule an immediate session. Should we continue observations? I watched another human child, this one barely 5 cycles old, climb up a piece of recreational equipment that stood at least 3 times their height, negotiating the structure with confidence and capability that seemed impossible. Yes, continue. But Quillix, From now on, assume nothing about human limitations. If they claim they can do something, believe them. We cannot afford any more miscalculations." The transmission ended, and I sat alone in my office, surrounded by decades of xenobiological research that suddenly felt completely inadequate. Throp had been right. We had a problem. The Galactic Council chamber had never felt so small, and I had never felt so exposed. Every seat was occupied, every species representative present. The circular hall, designed to accommodate gatherings of over 200 delegates, was packed beyond capacity. Word had spread that the human application review involved something significant. Though I had carefully avoided specifying exactly what that something was, they were about to find out. Commander Thexler called the session to order, his expression grim. He had reviewed the observation team's report before anyone else, and I watched him age approximately 5 cycles in the span of that reading. "Esteemed delegates," he began, "we are here to discuss the human application for coalition military membership. Senior researcher Velkoran will present updated findings following our recent observation mission to Earth. I must warn you, the information you are about to receive contradicts several fundamental assumptions we have held regarding biological limitations in variable gravity environments." The murmuring started immediately. I saw Jormulex lean forward in his seat, curiosity written across his features. Saravesh's tongue flicked in what I recognized as anticipation of vindication. She had been arguing for weeks that something about the human data was genuinely anomalous. I stood, activated the primary display, and decided to simply rip the bandage off. The humans were telling the truth. Earth's gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. They evolved there. Everything in their application is accurate. Silence. Then Representative Kilnara laughed. That same dismissive sound from our first meeting. "Belburn, surely you are joking. No species could possibly, the physiological requirements alone would be—" "I will show you," I interrupted, bringing up the first comparison chart. The display showed a simple bar graph. Human baseline strength on one side, averaged across all major galactic species on the other. The human bar was approximately 3.7 times larger. This represents the force output an average human can generate with their upper appendages in a simple lifting motion. As you can see, it exceeds our composite average by a factor of nearly 4 to 1. "That has to be a measurement error," someone called from the back. I pulled up video footage. A human construction worker casually hoisting a metal beam that massed 40 kilograms onto his shoulder, walking with it across a construction platform, setting it down, then returning for another. The timestamp showed he had been doing this for 6 hours. No error. This is standard human occupational activity. I cycled through more videos. Human athletes performing vertical jumps that would be impossible for most species even in reduced gravity. Human soldiers completing obstacle courses that looked like torture devices. Human children playing games that involved deliberate physical collision. The council chamber had gone completely silent. "Here is the critical data point," I continued, pulling up the most damning chart. "This shows the continuous force load experienced by a human body simply existing in their native gravity, compared to the maximum sustainable force load our strongest species can endure before physiological breakdown occurs." The 2 lines on the graph were almost identical. What you are seeing, esteemed delegates, is that a human doing absolutely nothing, just standing still and breathing, is experiencing force loads equivalent to what a Krexathi shock trooper endures at maximum combat exertion. Representative Thornax of the Krexathi delegation stood abruptly. "Impossible. You are saying these fragile-looking mammals are somehow equivalent to our warriors?" "No, Representative Thornax. I am saying they are superior. Your warriors are adapted for strength in standard gravity. Humans are adapted for survival in what we would classify as a Category 4 Deathworld." That term, Deathworld, sent a ripple through the chamber. "Deathworld?" Kilnara's voice had lost all its humor. "Belkarn, are you seriously classifying Earth as a Deathworld?" The observation team made that determination based on established criteria: high gravity, volatile weather patterns, significant seismic activity, aggressive predator species, disease vectors, and a biosphere that is actively hostile to most forms of life. By our own classification system, Earth scores a 4.2 out of 5 on the Planetary Hazard Index. I pulled up images of Earth's native fauna, creatures called sharks, with rows of serrated teeth, reptiles called crocodiles, ambush predators that could generate bite forces exceeding 16,000 newtons, insects called wasps, that injected venom as a defensive measure, microorganisms that caused rapid tissue breakdown. The humans did not just evolve on this planet, I said quietly. They conquered it. They rose from prey species to apex predator through sheer evolutionary pressure. Every threat their world presented they adapted to overcome, and then because apparently surviving was not challenging enough, they invented competitive sports where they simulate combat and injury for entertainment. Saravesh was the first to ask the obvious question. What does this mean for their military application? Commander Thexler stood, his posture radiating a resignation I had never seen from him before. It means that every strategic calculation we have made regarding force deployment, combat effectiveness and defensive capability is now obsolete. A single human soldier, operating in standard gravity, will have physical capabilities exceeding our best warriors by a significant margin. They will be faster, stronger, and able to sustain combat operations far longer than any current coalition forces. You are recommending approval? The question came from High Chancellor Mivix, the ultimate authority on coalition military matters. I am recommending immediate approval with full integration privileges, Thexler replied. Furthermore, I am recommending we petition the humans to take command positions in frontline operations. We need their expertise and their capabilities. The chamber erupted, delegates shouting over each other, some in protest, others in agreement, many simply in shock. High Chancellor Mivix raised his appendage for silence. It took several minutes to restore order. This council has never approved a species for military membership in a single session, he said slowly. We have protocols, evaluation periods, integration timelines. With respect, High Chancellor, we have also never encountered a species like this, Thexler countered. Every day we delay is a day we are not utilizing the most effective fighting force we have ever had access to. Mivix looked at me. Senior researcher Velkren, your professional assessment. Are the humans dangerous to coalition interests? I thought about that question carefully. High Chancellor, the humans are extremely dangerous, but based on all observation data their danger is directed outward, toward threats, not toward allies. Their cultural values emphasize pack bonding, loyalty to group structures, and protective instincts toward those they consider friends. If we accept them as coalition members, I believe they will defend us with the same terrifying effectiveness they would defend their own. And if we reject them, I pulled up one final image, a human spacecraft, primitive by our standards but functional, breaking atmosphere on what appeared to be a routine cargo mission. Then we will have rejected a species that is already achieving spaceflight, that is already expanding into their local stellar neighborhood, and that will absolutely remember we turned them away when they asked to join us. High Chancellor, we are not deciding whether humans become a spacefaring military power. That is already happening. We are deciding whether they do it with us, or without us. The vote took less than 10 minutes. Unanimous approval. As the chamber cleared, Jormulex approached me, his expression unreadable. You know what the worst part is, Velkorn? What? We laughed at them. We sat in this very chamber and laughed because we thought they made a mistake. We assumed we knew better. That is going to haunt me for the rest of my life. He walked away, and I was left standing alone, staring at the display screens still showing images of humans doing impossible things in impossible conditions. 43 cycles of experience, and I had learned nothing. The humans had been telling us the truth from the very beginning. We just had not been intelligent enough to believe them. The human delegation arrived 3 weeks later, and I made the catastrophic error of volunteering to greet them personally. Call it scientific curiosity. Call it professional responsibility. Call it the universe's sense of irony. Whatever the reason, I stood in the docking bay as their shuttle completed its landing sequence, determined to meet these remarkable beings face to face. The airlock cycled open and out stepped Captain Elena Vasquez, commander of the Human Military Integration Team. She was smaller than I expected. Perhaps 1.7 meters tall, slim build, dark hair pulled back in a functional style. She looked, and I say this with the benefit of painful hindsight, completely harmless. Senior researcher Velkorn, she said, her translator rendering her words in perfect galactic standard. It is an honor to finally meet you. Thank you for advocating for our application. She extended her right appendage hand toward me in what I had learned was a human greeting gesture called a handshake. I reached out with my primary manipulator and grasped her hand. She squeezed gently. The crack was audible across the entire docking bay. Pain exploded through my appendage as 3 of my manipulator bones fractured under what Captain Vasquez clearly considered a polite, friendly grip. I made a sound I did not know I was capable of making. Something between a wheeze and a yelp. Oh no. Oh stars, I am so sorry. Vasquez released immediately, horror spreading across her face. I thought, the briefing said Velcrosians had similar grip tolerance too. I was barely even squeezing. Medical. We need medical here now. As I stood there, cradling my shattered appendage while human and galactic medical personnel swarmed around me, I had a crystallizing moment of understanding. She had barely been squeezing. That was gentle by human standards. The next 4 hours were educational in ways I desperately wish they had not been. From my position in the medical bay, I watched through the observation window as the human delegation began joint training exercises with our coalition forces. A human private named Jackson Chen was asked to demonstrate basic equipment loading procedures. He picked up a supply container that required a full Krexathi loading crew, massing approximately 80 kilograms, and carried it up a ramp by himself. When asked if he needed assistance, he looked confused and responded, "No ma'am, this is pretty light actually." Lieutenant Sarah Kimathi performed what humans called a standing long jump during mobility assessments. She cleared 4.3 meters horizontally from a stationary position, in standard gravity, landing with perfect balance. The previous coalition record for that maneuver was 2.1 meters, held by a species specifically evolved for jumping. Sergeant David Okonkwo was observed during a routine physical fitness evaluation performing an exercise called a pull-up, where humans suspend themselves from an overhead bar and raise their entire body weight using only their upper appendages. He completed 57 repetitions before stopping, not from exhaustion but because the evaluator ran out of space on the recording form. But the moment that truly ended my denial, the observation that crystallized just how fundamentally different humans were from every other species in the coalition, came during a cultural exchange event later that afternoon. A human family had been invited to the integration facility, part of a diplomatic outreach program. The parents were discussing settlement logistics with our civilian administration staff. Their daughter, a child named Amy who could not have been more than 7 solar cycles old, was playing in a designated area while the adults talked. I watched as little Amy approached a piece of equipment that had been left out, a standard-issue ammunition container used for small arms munitions. Empty. It massed approximately 15 kilograms. Our safety protocols required 2-person teams to move them, even when empty. Amy picked it up, with both hands, yes, but she picked it up, carried it across the room, approximately 6 meters, and set it down next to another container so she could use both as stepping stools to reach a water dispenser. A 7-cycle-old human child had just casually performed a task that would require mechanical assistance for most adult species in the coalition. She then climbed onto her makeshift step arrangement, filled a cup with water, climbed down and returned to her coloring activity, completely unaware that she had done anything remotely unusual. Captain Vasquez noticed me staring. She approached carefully, clearly terrified of injuring me again. "Senior Researcher Velkorn, I want to apologize again for your appendage. I have been reviewing Velkorn's physiological data, and we the entire human delegation, needs better training on appropriate force modulation for interaction with other species." "Captain," I said quietly, my pain medication making me perhaps more honest than was wise, "do you know what the most frightening thing about your species is? Our strength? Our endurance? No. It is that you have absolutely no idea how strong you are. That child just moved 15 kilograms like it was nothing. You shattered my bones with a greeting. Your private carried 80 kilograms and called it light. None of you understand that what is casual effort for you is maximum exertion for us." Vasquez followed my gaze to Amy, who was now hanging upside down from a handrail, giggling. "In 9.8, simulated gravity. For fun. We are going to need to establish very strict protocols, are we not?" Vasquez said slowly. "Captain, your species is going to revolutionize coalition military capabilities. You are going to save lives, win battles, and change the strategic balance of this entire sector of space. But yes, please, for the love of all that exists, teach your people to be gentle with us. We are fragile compared to you." She smiled. An expression I had learned indicated friendly acknowledgement. "We can do that. Humans are very good at adapting. It is kind of our thing." I looked down at my medical cast, then back at Amy, who had somehow climbed 3 meters up a support pillar and was waving at her parents. 43 cycles as a xenobiologist, and a child had just taught me the most important lesson of my career. Never, ever, underestimate a species based on their casual demeanor, because what they consider normal might be your definition of impossible, and what they call gentle might just break your bones.